So yeah, the all-new GPD Win Mini can definitely be turned into a full-fledged 1440p gaming machine when you pair it up with their new Oculink eGPU dock. What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be transforming the brand new GPD Win Mini into a full-fledged gaming PC using the GPD G1 Oculink eGPU dock. So if you're not familiar with the Win Mini, I've got one other video that I created, kind of a first look video, and this thing is absolutely amazing. I mean, with this, we've got a 7-inch 120Hz display. Obviously, we've got a clamshell or a foldable design here, a backlit QWERTY keyboard, trackpad, built-in controls, and as you can see here, I'm actually playing Forza Horizon 5 on it right now. It games really well by itself. This is actually powered by a Ryzen 7 7840U with RDNA 3 graphics. But we can get a lot more out of this because GPD actually decided to add an Oculink port on the back of the Win Mini. And of course, we've also got USB 4, so if you did want to connect the Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 eGPU to this, you can do it quite easily. But I'm more interested in the Oculink port here because it does offer greater bandwidth than Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. So for instance, Thunderbolt 4 has a theoretical max speed of 40 gigs a second. Oculink is 63 gigs a second, and through all of my testing, I've just got much better performance over Oculink. Now you can build your own dock for pretty cheap. You can buy parts on Amazon for about $30. Then of course you will need to add your own GPU and power supply. And this is actually a really inexpensive way to create your own dock, or you could go with GPD's new G1 dock. And this thing is absolutely amazing. It's an all-in-one graphics dock, and it has a Radeon RX 7600 MXT with 8 GB of GDDR6 VRAM. And up front here, we've got our Oculink connector, or you can connect it to USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, or Thunderbolt 4. It's really up to you, but like I mentioned, you will get better performance over Oculink. It'll also add a ton of I/O to whatever device you want to connect it to. Plus, it does 60-watt PD charging out, so while it's connected to these handhelds, we don't have to worry about battery life or anything like that. And getting the G1 connected is super simple. Basically, we've got power from the wall coming to the dock. I've also got video out going to a larger monitor. I'm using DisplayPort, but you can use HDMI if you want. And with this setup, I will be utilizing both of the connections on the front. We've got Oculink and USB. USB is only going to be used for powering up the Win Mini. And when it comes to GPD's new handhelds with the 7840Us, from the Win 4, the Win Mini, obviously, the one we have here, and the GPD Win Max 2 with that 7840U, they all have Oculink ports directly on the units themselves, so it makes it really easy to get one of these up and running. So for this, I'm just going to plug in the Oculink to that Oculink port on the back of the Win Mini, USB-C to keep that battery charged up, and once we've got everything connected, we want to power up the GPU first, and then we'll power up our handheld. So now, instead of using the iGPU on this handheld, which just happens to be the Radeon 780M, we've got a Radeon RX 7600 MXT connected, and we're going to be running everything to a larger monitor. Alright, so here it is. I've got everything hooked up correctly, all my drivers are installed, and as you can see, I've actually got both displays going right now. And you could run it like this if you want to run it 1080p, but in order to get those higher resolutions on the external display, we will need to disable the internal display on the Win Mini. So I'll do that in just a second, but I want to give you a look here. Now from Task Manager, as you can see, we've got that Ryzen 7 7840U. This happens to have 32 GB of DDR5 running at 7500 MHz. We can still access the 780M iGPU, but we're not going to be using that because we've got this Radeon RX 7600 MXT connected. And it's definitely going to up the GPU performance of this little handheld. And another thing I like to point out here is Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 is only going to run at PCIe X4 3.0. With Oculink, we can get this to run at PCIe X4 4.0. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at how this performs. And the first game we have here is Cyberpunk 2077. Okay, so keep in mind with all of these games, our CPU is going to be handled by that 7840U and the Win Mini. When it comes to the heavy lifting, the GPU stuff that, we really can't do on that iGPU, at least at these higher resolutions, it's all going to be handled by the G1, which has that RX 7600 MXT. Right now, we're at 1440p high, and when you use the preset of high, it does turn on FSR for us. But as you can see, we're using that preset of high at 1440p. We can get an average of around 74 FPS with this on this setup, which is really awesome. But I think one of the most impressive things here is I've actually got Turbo Boost disabled with the 7840U and the Win Mini. And we're only pulling around 12 watts from that CPU right now. If you take a look at Afterburner, very last section there is the CPU package power. And for most of the games that I tested, I didn't have to go over 15 watts, but the last one we had to go up just a bit. It's a brand new game. But even with something like God of War, we didn't have to up that TDP, and it's actually even drawing less than it did with Cyberpunk. We're right there at around 9 watts. Of course, the external GPU is pulling a lot more power, but I just wanted to see if we could get away with no turbo boost in these lower TDPs. And it seems like that 7840U, at least, when it comes to CPU performance, can handle most anything out there at these lower wattages just fine. And with God of War 1440p high on the setup, we averaged 71 FPS. Now, AMD doesn't consider the 7600 MXT a 1440p card. They really describe it as an Ultra 1080p card, but what I found is this is a very capable card at 1440p high settings as opposed to 1440p Ultra. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, or even Spider-Man Remastered is one of those that has always given me issues with USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, or Thunderbolt 4 eGPU docks, but with Oculink, you don't have to worry about that. And with this one, we're at 1440p very high with no resolution scale, so I didn't even need to enable FSR or anything like that. We're at a true 1440p resolution, maxed out here with Spider-Man Miles Morales. And the final game we're going to be testing here in this video is Starfield. Now, if you're familiar with the performance of this game, you know that with these long draw distances, when you're out, it can really hurt your GPU performance. Indoors, even an iGPU can run at 60 FPS, 720p, and even 900p in some cases. But since we've got this more powerful GPU connected, we're at 1440p medium, and you can see it's getting really close to going under 60. We hit around 62 FPS as a low here, but it's still really playable. I would suggest running this at 1080p, high or ultra, with a little less FSR on, but if you wanted to do 1440p medium, which it still looks great and plays just fine, you could definitely do it on this setup. So overall, I've been having a blast with the new GPD Win Mini in handheld mode and of course when connected to an external GPU, be it USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, or Oculink. If you're interested in checking out my first look video, I'll leave a link in the description. And keep in mind, GPD actually has their Indiegogo running right now for the Win Mini. I'll leave that down below in case you want to learn a little more about it. They have a few different tiers to choose from. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. I had a lot of people asking about this, and I'm really glad to see that GPD has been adding this Oculink port to all of their new 7000 series powered handhelds. It really helps out because, you can definitely game on the go with the iGPU, but when you get home and you really want to up that performance, you can plug it right in and game all night. If you've got any questions, let me know down below. And like always, thanks for watching.